part of that context calculation is your real life too. Like,
yes,
I don't have kids. My husband also works from home. So my like sort of life context is more flexible than other people's. So when I do hit that busy season, I can pull strings to have someone else cook dinner, have someone else do the laundry in a way that not everyone can. So the business that I design and the ways that I design it to be flexible are so different from other people.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tanya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how.
Today's episode is part of my What It Really Takes series, conversations with clients who are building businesses that honor their values, their capacity, and their creative energy. In this interview, I'm talking with paper artist Abigail McMurray. She is the founder and owner of YEIOU Paper Objects. Abigail has built this creative business that not only reflects her artistic vision, but also supports the kind of life she actually wants to live. Now, if you've ever wondered what it looks like to grow a sustainable business as a maker, balancing the online sales, in-person events, and your own creative rhythm, Abigail's story is a masterclass in simplifying, focusing, and thriving without having to burn out. And if you like what you hear and want to talk more about it, book a call at everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity. Let's get started. I am so excited that you are here, Abigail. And ironically, it was very funny because at the end of my live with Nicole last week, I was talking about you and Hannah Lisa seeing each other in Germany, not quite aware in my mind that you and I were the one. I knew we were doing a live, but I didn't realize like you were the next one. And it was like, oh, this is perfect timing. So the person that we were talking about is actually who we're actually talking with today. So let me officially introduce you. I am super excited to have you and your willingness to be on our LinkedIn Live that we're doing as part of our celebration of our 1 year of podcasting, of Tanya and I podcasting together. And we're really talking about what makes success sustainable. And, what does it really take? Because, the business you really want is our podcast name. And it really is about not just creating the business that everyone says you're supposed to have, but the business that really is the thing that you want. I am super excited, Abigail, to have you on. And I want to start with, a very kind of traditional interview question. Let's just be honest. Talking about your business today, tell us about, what you do, who you serve, and then tell us about what it is look like when we first started working together, which I think we're not quite up to 3 years, but I think we're coming up close.
Yeah, I looked that up, but I don't remember early 20s are.
Yeah, I think this fall will have been 3 years. I think we're getting close to that. So anyway, tell us about your business. Tell us what you do, who you serve. Tell us about what it was like for us to start working together.
Yeah. So I'm a paper artist. I make things out of paper. And in the 11-ish years I've been in business, that has changed. But right now I am making things that celebrate place and home. And I make map art and I make public transit vehicles and maps. And I also have started working with some collage and like sort of inspirational quotes, meaning about coming home to yourself and not just home as a geographical place. And I've never been great at answering questions about who my audience is. That's something I'm working on. But I make pieces for people locally here. A lot of my work is really emphasizing a Boston area public transit locally to here. But I also make custom maps of anywhere in the world. So people who love a place and want to celebrate it in a unique way as wall art. And
so I would say part of your audience is people who appreciate original art and or have a really tight association with a place.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I do like family vacation destinations or the place you're moving to or from. In the Boston area, a lot of people are here for really important seasons of life, like undergrad or grad school, or they're here until they start a family and then they go somewhere else. And so they want to remember the times here that were so dynamic. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of people here that yeah.
Well, before we got on, I made you grab some of your artwork because I think it's one of those things that you describe and it's like, huh. And then you see it and you go, oh my gosh, it's so cool. At least that's what I have done. So show us a little bit of your artwork before you go on and answer the question about what it was like. So this is one of your places, right? And I recently hired you to do a similar type of thing for one of our friends who has this beautiful summer home on a lake that's a private lake. And I actually haven't given you his feedback, but they were like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest gift, because we called them at the last minute and said, hey, can we come and spend the weekend, just randomly? And they were like, oh yeah, sure. And so that was our thank you gift. And they thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Aw, yay.
It was amazing. So
Great. Yeah. So it's cut paper and this one has pom-poms inside. Usually it's just a color in the background, but I make these for anywhere in the world. And yeah. And then for public transit, the local system here in the Boston area is called the T. And so I have this system map that I've made out of layers of paper.
I love that. It's very cool. And then the newest thing you're doing that I happen to know Tanya, who is my co-host, thinks is the best thing ever. And as soon as she saw it, she was like, Brian, I want this. Brian, I want this. Brian, I want this. So show us that, because I also think it's very, very cool.
There's a little bit of glare here, but the letters are 3D and the background is collage. And so I'm making these with a few different freezes and colors and been exploring some new ideas here.
Yeah, and I love the what I'm going to call the matting, the framing of it is also multidimensional. It's not just a single dimension, even though it's only in one color, which I think is super cool. And then the other thing, which as you said, you don't have because they're custom done, and then when they're done, they leave are your house portraits. And
right.
Tanya is watching online, and we'll put a link in the chat so you can see what one of these house portraits are. They are flippin' amazing. The 3-dimensional nature of them, all of the pieces. When I first saw it, it was like, oh, I just didn't even know you could do that with paper. I mean,
but they're also the reason I started working with you, because I got some press in 2019 and 2020 and was just head down cutting and gluing tiny pieces of paper for 2 years and just was beyond burnt out. And so when I found you and you were like, maybe there's a way out of this, I was like, please tell me. I sign up.
Well, and one of the things that's very different between you and the work that I do with Nicole is Nicole and I have been working as a private one-on-one client, but you and I have been working together using our weekly course of action process and our quarterly tune-up process exclusively. And so I think it's going to be an interesting conversation to talk. I mean, like, it's kind of like night and day. It's the kind of two extremes that we have of the product service offering, where Nicole, she and I are talking literally most every week. You and I actually don't talk that much, occasionally, but yet we're still communicating.
And those conversations we've had have been so meaningful that they've I run with those conversations for 6 months or a year, and that's been amazing.
Well, and I think that's the thing that, it depends on who you are, what you're doing, and what you're trying to do. I mean, one of the other differences, there's lots of differences between what you do and what Nicole does. But one of the other differences is Nicole is very much about growing her business substantially in huge, huge ways. And that is just not on your radar at all. right? And of course, part of it is I totally support that. Like I support Nicole wanting to grow really fast, but I'm also completely cool with you saying, no, I don't want this to be a big, giant business where I've got, 5 or 6 paper cutters and gluers and people working for me trying to get these things out. So talk a little bit about that decision for yourself and how that feels, because I think it's one of the contrary things that we don't allow ourselves to do, to say, no, this is the business that I really want. Because I think you've got a pretty clear idea of what the business is that you really want. Maybe not all the details, but conceptually, at a high level. Talk about that.
Yeah. I think I have a stronger sense of the business I don't want.
Oh, I love that. So talk about that.
So you say having a team of 5 or 6 people, and that's my nightmare. I am the person who loves to sit here and cut and glue paper. It's just not the same thing every day for 2 years. And the idea of managing a team and having to, that's just a whole different job. So that's not something I'm interested in. So I think part of the reason that you talk to Nicole so much more frequently is because she has the momentum of having a staff, having a team of people, and I am 2 hands. So,
they're 2 talented hands, but they are, as you say, only 2 hands.
Sometimes I wish there were more, but not enough to manage other people.
Yeah,
So.
no. And, and I love that you say that you absolutely know what you don't want, because a lot of times it is easier to figure out what we do want by actually focusing on what we don't want. The do want is such a kind of unlimited possibility that it can be overwhelming. But saying, but I know I don't want this, and I know I don't want that, and I know I don't want the other thing. Along that line, how have you been able to both keep your product narrow and pivot and change over time? Because as you said early on, that, when you first started this business, you were doing very different things than you're doing now. And even when we started working together, you're doing different things than when we started working together, right? But at the same point, I don't feel like they're like these massively different things where it's like, I don't know how to, I don't know how to put them in a bucket together. Like they totally make sense to me in a bucket kind of, standpoint. But talk about that transition, about where you've gone from this thing to the next thing and how you think through those transitions.
Yeah. I think it comes back to knowing what I don't want. And I have a strong internal, if somebody tells me something I should do or have to do or whatever, I have a pretty strong, no, I'll do what I want part.
Good for you.
So I started off by making flat pack gift boxes, and those evolved into craft kits, and I added cards and some stickers and sort of experimented with things, but with things that I was excited to experiment with. Maybe they started off as, oh, what if you made cards? But it took me in my own time to go from that idea to a real thing. So I guess I've tried not to rush unless I'm really excited about something.
Well, I think that makes sense. How did you get to house portraits?
Yeah. So I was making these little craft kit sort of flat pack projects, and then I started making them house shaped because there was a tiny house festival in the nearby town, and they were looking for vendors. And I was like, well, if I'm vending at a tiny house festival, I have to have
a tiny house. Yeah.
And these were really popular, more so than my more geometric things I was making at the time. So I started making these as a set of 3 different colors and styles of houses. And there were tall ones and fat ones and different designs. And then people started asking for them to look like real houses. And I could do that to some extent with this sort of simple form. But somebody asked for one as a keepsake, as a gift to someone, and sort of backed up. And I was like, well, if this is a thing that's special, that's precious, that is it you want to keep for a long time, it can't, this is faded and dented and stuff. So I was like, well, it needs to be behind glass. It needs to be in a frame. And then I just sort of did it for them. It was for a friend. And a few months later, I had some more time and space and was thinking about that project again. I was like, I wonder if other people would like this. So I made one of my own house. I posted it on Instagram and people were really excited about it. So it just sort of organically from there became more of a thing. And then all of a sudden, that's all I was doing for 2 years.
Well, because it's a very unique, it's a very unique item for sure. And, depending on who we are and what our story is, sometimes our house or a place like that has really deep meaning. And for some of us, it doesn't, which I get as well. I remember one of our quarterly tune-ups, one of the other participants heard about you and said, "Oh my gosh, I've got to get this gift for my friend because he introduces himself as I'm so-and-so from," and it was one of the boroughs in New York. I can't remember which one it was. Brooklyn, I think. Yeah. But even though he's living in California, I'm so-and-so, I'm from Brooklyn. I mean, like it was his thing. And so I know I think even like before we were done, she's like, I'm ordering this from Abigail. Because obviously that meant a ton to him, and I remember, talking to her later, and he was like, oh, he loved it. He thought it was the greatest, gift ever. Right. So where do you sell all of your products? Because you actually sell your products in a variety of, channels and ways. So talk a little bit about that and how you make those choices.
Yeah. So I have a website. And I also don't advertise it, but I still have some products on Etsy that, if people find them, that's great. And I have wholesale agreements with a couple of local shops here in the Boston area.
Okay.
And then I also do events in the sort of local, but maybe regional at different times area, where like a street festival sort of thing where I pop up a tent and bring all my work and sell it on the street.
How do you figure out which of those things go where and why and how? Because that's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty organic. I mean, the website is there. And
Right. Yeah.
and I sort of know that like gift giving season sort of in the spring and summer. And at the end of the year, I'm likely to get a little bit more activity on the website. And then the event season in the Boston area, there's a lot of outdoor big summer art markets. So May through June or July. And then there's sort of the holiday season, October, November, December.
Right.
And so, yeah, I've been doing this for long enough that I can sort of prepare for things and kind of anticipate a little bit or hope.
Well, because, the one thing I learned when I was doing vendor stuff years ago was you can never anticipate the customer. Whatever the thing is you have, you're going to have the wrong thing.
Yeah.
The thing I bring a lot of is what they don't want. The thing I don't bring a lot of is what they do want. And if the next time I do exactly the opposite, it's exactly the opposite. Like there is no winning that game.
Every once in a while, I guess, right. And it feels so good.
Oh my gosh. It's like, oh, the stars aligned. But you do have to get over like that I'm bad for not knowing, because it's like you just can't.
Right.
Completely.
And in the early days, and there was a specific show I remember, it was right before Valentine's Day, and it was like, so people are going to expect Valentine's things. So I stayed up until like 3 a.m. coming up with new Valentine's related products. And then there was a blizzard that day. So the only people that came to the show were like to let their kids run around in the gym while they sipped coffee and like stared off into the middle distance. So I sold basically nothing, none of the stuff I'd stayed up late for. And I was delirious because I'd gotten 3 hours.
You had no sleep.
Sleep never again.
So, that leads me to another question. How do you balance that trying to over deliver versus, staying in your zone of genius when it comes to, your products, staying creative, doing all of those things? Because I've seen you pivot, but like I said, you seem to pivot with intention.
Oh, I'm glad it seems that way.
I love that answer. I'm glad it seems that way. It's not that way, but I'm glad it seems that way.
I don't know. Pivoting is the changes that my business has been through have always been a little angsty feeling on the inside. And I think we've talked a lot about transitioning from sort of being a small handmade business. I used to think of myself as a product designer to thinking of myself more as an artist making art. And I've been fighting that sort of tooth and nail for 3 or 4 years.
I remember our conversation about it. It was like, I am not an artist. And it's like, that's not true.
I remember having this conversation with a friend, and I was like, I can't make stuff that goes in frames on the wall. Like, who does that? Artists do that. That's not me. And even in art school, I resisted putting things in a frame on the wall. I was trying to make like interactive sculptural pieces or something. And so to find myself here making things that go in a frame on the wall, even though they're still 3D, they're still like, they're very me. That was a big emotional hurdle for sure.
I remember one of the other kind of I'll say emotional hurdles that we talked about, and that I've now see that you're doing on a somewhat regular basis, not like constantly, but is actually submitting to calls for art or for particular shows and things. And I remember I think I was one of the ones to kind of first lay down the gauntlet and say, try just one, just try it.
Yeah.
So what has that been like for you?
It's been good. And I really do appreciate that challenge from you. Like I mentioned earlier that I'm sort of like rebellious. Like I don't like being told what to do, but however you delivered it, I received it well. Thank you. I made a piece this spring specifically for a local call for art, and it didn't get in. So I felt good about having like made a thing specifically for it and figured out how to work that in with all the other things I'm doing, and actually putting it out there was great. And then it sort of was just like, oh, not a thing, moving on. And that's been okay. My alma mater actually is doing their first graphic design alumni show. And so I made a piece in this series, not this one, for that show. And it's not really juried. They're sort of just like accepting work from everyone who applies. But I will send that off this week. And that's really exciting. It's back in Illinois, so I won't see it in the gallery in person. But just to know that it'll be hanging there is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So let's move a little bit back to the business side of things, because I think, one of the things that a lot of people are always surprised about is that I work with people like Nicole who are very much focused in a corporate business, kind of thing. But I also do a lot of work with artists that are really artists. They're not just creatives. A lot of times people are like, oh, I work with creatives. Well, a lot of people qualify as creatives. Let's be honest.
Everyone.
But artists that really are doing art type activities, right? And I'll say it's stereotypical, but I think it's still, stereotypes often come out of truisms that artists often struggle with the business side of things, right? So, how do you manage that for yourself, of being able to do the business side of stuff that needs to happen, but still be able to manage holding that space for the artistic creativity, pieces of it, because they really are kind of two different sides of the brain. You probably can talk about it way more than even I can, but what have you done for that? How do you balance it? How does that work for you?
Yeah. Well, I think, like I said, I resisted being an artist for a really long time. I mean, maybe my whole life or whatever, but in business terms, I'm like 11 years in now, I think 11 and a half. And it's only been since we started working together in 22 or whatever that I was like,
Right.
realized that a large part of my burnout problem with the house portraits was that I wasn't in Julia Cameron's The Artist Way. There's this metaphor of like the creative well, and the idea that you can draw from it, but you have to refill it. And so, I mean, my well was just sand by the time we started working together. I think for me, figuring out what constitutes as sort of refilling that well and how to make space for that when I had 6 or 7 or 8 years of habits of doing it the other way, of like not making space for that. That's been the challenge for me. And so, like right now, my strategy is I take some community education classes. They're affordable, they're in my neighborhood, and they give me space to just have a structure to leave work behind and go throw paint around or whatever. And then also these products are sneakily designed to give me the time to like play around with the collage stuff, which is fun, even if it's sort of on a deadline and for work. That process is still something that fills me up because it's so new and different.
How did the weekly course of action help you in that process? Because like we said, the first time you and I had, a long conversation about the business was probably somewhere like 6 to 12 months in.
I think we
probably had an initial meeting.
Initial call. Yeah.
But beyond that, like the first, like really, like the time that I threw down the gauntlet, that was more like I said, 6 or 12 months in, I think. When you said, yeah, I think I'd like to have just a one-on-one call with you. And so we scheduled an hour and we made that happen. But how did the weekly course of action help you start refilling the well? Like, how did that process work? Because I think a lot of people just can't possibly believe that an asynchronous, non-actual, conversation thing could impact the business. And I know, you've stayed in for long enough to know that it must be helping, because otherwise you continue to do it, right?
Yeah.
So,
but in my recollection, that initial conversation we had was I asked for help figuring out how to fix my house portrait process so that it wasn't killing me slowly. And so I raised my prices, and you like set out some different, you challenged me to do a few different things to fix sort of these things that I was feeling stuck in addition to the burnout. And so once I was able to kind of climb out of that, I raised my prices. I found a better frame supplier to make them feel more valuable in the finish, and did a few other things. I fired some clients who placed an order but never sent me photos, and they were just sort of like hanging out rent free in my brain.
Right. Can't really create something if you don't know what it looks like.
So then once I had like gotten back out onto level ground, it felt like then you helped me figure out that I needed to fill the well before I could move forward. And I've tried different things with the WCA. So I've added as a weekly goal, spend some time doing something creative. There was a season where for a month or two, I'd like took an extra day off every week in the middle of the week to like do whatever I felt like doing and not feel like I had to be at my desk answering emails or reacting to things. And I used the weekly format as a way to give myself that structure and that reminder that like, Wednesday is a day that you're not supposed to be sitting at your desk. Go read a book, go for a walk. And that was when I first started using the community ed courses as part of that structure, because they are so accessible. And that snowballed into this new line of products and everything. So that like healing back up to baseline and then making space and then figuring out what comes out of it, I guess, has been my arc.
What has been one of the surprises for you of doing the WCA and or being part of the quarterly tune-up? Because like I said, you were one of our very first people who came in as a weekly course of action only person. I had just barely started offering it as a standalone item. I'd been doing it for, I don't know, not quite a year with my clients. And at some point it occurred to me, kind of like we were talking about how these things kind of pivot. It was like, I think this is valuable in and of itself.
Yeah.
So what has been surprising for you?
I think that like external structure has been super valuable. Having the quarterly framework, having the weekly like check-in, accountability, just that like cadence of work life. Like I said, I've been doing this for 11 years or whatever. And before this, time would just kind of pass. Sure, I mean, that still happens. I've been working on relaunching my website, I think, for a year now. So things still can get away from me, but I'm more aware of the fact that it's been that long and made conscious decisions about prioritizing different things in different seasons because that's the structure. And I've used that weekly document in so many different ways. Like for that, like I mentioned, that like making space for creative play. I've used it as a way to give myself structure for looking at like my finances and looking at my expenses and income every week as a way to just have that sort of practice. Yeah, I love that it's structure, but I can make it be the structure that I need in that season. That flexibility is really important to me.
I think the flexibility is part of the secret, right? For the whole thing. So for a maker like yourself, creative artist, who's trying to do everything, right? Because I think a lot of folks that are artist makers are often like you. They really are the one-man band, right? They're doing it all. What would you tell them about making a sustainable business?
I think it's important to know what your priorities and your values are first, and to look at there's so many people on the internet and in real life who will tell you the secret to making $1 million or whatever. Like, but if you can hold on to your specific values and priorities, I've seen so many people and had so many conversations with other people starting businesses or whatever. And they're like, well, how do I get my products into shops? I'm like, oh, well, you make something that's pretty labor intensive, one at a time. Why do you want to put your products in shops? Because usually wholesale is like a manufactured product. Your margins are so much less. Like it's hard if you're making it by hand, it's really hard to pay yourself anything if you're wholesaling. Like, oh, well, I've been doing markets for a while and that seems like the next step. That's what everyone else is doing. I'm like, well, you can put your products in shops and like the way to do it is to go ask the shopkeeper or whatever. But like really encourage you to take a look at your costs and your time and make sure that this makes sense for you. Just because it makes sense for someone else doesn't mean it makes sense for you.
There's so much wisdom in what you just said. And I think it's the thing that so many people get caught in is, Susie over here has taken this path and it looks like Susie is super successful. So I probably should take Susie's path. Right.
And if Susie wants to charge you money to tell you how to take their path, that means that Susie's path is maybe not as lucrative as they're telling you.
I love that. And often Susie only knows one path.
Yes.
Right. And it may have been lucrative for her.
Yeah.
Right. But, one of my favorite sayings, I don't think I ever get to do it on, like a talking thing without saying context matters, because it does. Right. Part of the reason it may work for Susie is because what she needs to be successful is not the same as what someone else needs to be successful. Right. What is their definition of success?
Yeah.
Right. And like, I love what you said, that if they're wanting to, charge you money to tell you how to do the same successful thing, it's like, I love that. But my bigger thing that I see a lot is that they do know how to tell you how to do it this one way.
Yeah.
But back to, especially when we're talking about creatives and makers and artists, there's so much context in the art itself to say whether or not that particular path is going to work, right? Yeah. And even if the art feels very, very similar, we still have the variable of the artist themselves, right? And how much time and thought and energy and things go into this piece. For someone, it may be more like manufacturing, and someone else is like, no, this takes all of my energy. Even though what looks like the finished product may be pretty similar. From a completely ignorant eye like myself, it's like, well, that's a painting and that's a painting. I don't, like I don't see the difference, from that kind of standpoint. But it could, there could be a lot of context in there that makes that those two paintings that are both exactly the same size have a whole lot of different piece in there. So I think there's huge wisdom in what you just said. Anything else that you want to share that, as you were thinking about this, because we prepped you, we gave you questions, and we haven't quite gone through them in order because that's not the way I work, and you knew that coming in, so no one is shocked or surprised. Anything else that, as you were thinking about this, that you were like, one thing people need to know that really has changed the way I've been able to work, that's made my work more sustainable, even if you said it before. Anything else you want to?
Well, I think in our conversation about context, I want to mention that part of that context calculation is your real life too.
Yes,
I don't have kids. My husband also works from home. So my sort of life context is more flexible than other people's. So when I do hit that busy season, I can pull strings to have someone else cook dinner, have someone else do the laundry in a way that not everyone can. So the business that I design and the ways that I design it to be flexible are so different from other people.
I love that you shared that, because I do think, that's a key piece in understanding what success looks like for people, is also not only what does success look like, but what is my reality, right? Because there are certain things that you just can't undo, at least not easily, and that you have to take into consideration. And one of my more recent clients has a brand new baby. You can't not deal with the fact that you have a brand new baby. You have a brand new baby. They need to be fed. They need all the things, which is very different from another client who's dealing with high school age kids, which whole different set of issues and rules, right? To folks that have kids out of the house, to folks like you and I that don't have kids at all. Right. So we aren't dealing with little kids, old kids, young kids, grandkids. We're not dealing with any of those things. Right. And I do think being really aware of what our reality is as we're defining that success is also super, super important. And knowing, where do you have the flexibility? Where do you not have the flexibility? And to not try and create something that just probably can't be created in a reasonable way,
right?
Unless you're willing to do the unreasonable things that it may take, right?
Yeah. And then, like I said, I've had seasons where I was up until 3 a.m., which I could do because I wasn't caring for small children, but ultimately wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted to have. And so I've been working on ways to make different decisions and keep work contained to more traditional working hours.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. So just to do a quick summary, as always, context matters. I love that that came up. That when we're starting to define our version of success, also knowing what we don't want, I think was a really insightful thing. Of often that's an easier place to start. What I know I don't want, what absolutely gives me the heebie-jeebies, the things that are so energy draining when I even say the words coming out of my mouth, I think is huge. I also think that being willing to adjust and pivot over time, and not necessarily being too worried about it being super intentional. Because like I said, from my standpoint as a relatively knowledgeable outside observer, looked way more intentional than what it may have been. But you were able to do it because you were doing it based on what made sense internally for you.
Yeah.
It wasn't being driven by somebody else saying you should do this. It was like, oh, this is an interesting idea. We can keep making the shifts, because quite honestly, that was the same reason that we're working together. Is I made one of those same kind of shifts. It's like, oh, we could probably just offer this as a standalone product, and poof, here we are. I always love having conversations with you because you are a delight, and love the product that you create, as you know, because as I said, I give it to friends. I have also given it as client gifts on a regular basis because it is a fabulous piece. If you haven't had a chance, go to Abigail's website at www.YEIOU.com and check out her art. It's really amazing. It's super, super cool. Abigail, thank you for being here. I very much appreciate it. And just to be, as a reminder, we've got one more scheduled of these sustainable success with our existing clients and talking about their road to sustainable success. And we're going to be meeting with Ashley Berghoff, who's also an ops person. So like we're going the whole gamut, of the types of folks that we work with. And we're going to be meeting with her next week at 12:15 Pacific on September. I got to double check the day.
September.
I know. Can you believe that it's September 2nd? So it's going to be on Tuesday instead of Wednesday at 12:15 with Ashley. It is, I know she and I also, we have great conversation. We did not do this with someone we didn't have a great conversation with. It'll be a fabulous conversation as well. Thank you again, Abigail. I very much appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tanya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.